The birth of a superpower, from Jamestown to the Revolution. The story of America is not just a collection of dates, it is a saga of pioneers, rebels, and entrepreneurs who transformed a wilderness into the envy of the world. It began with a perilous 2-month voyage across the Atlantic, a journey where 7 out of 10 adventurers were dead within a year. Yet, for those who survived, North America offered the ultimate prize, a continent of untapped wealth, 50 billion trees, and the promise of religious and economic freedom. The Hell of Jamestown and the Tobacco Miracle. In May 1610, the ship Deliverance arrived at the English settlement of Jamestown. What the passengers found was not El Dorado, but a living hell. Of the 500 settlers who had come before them, barely 60 remained. This was the starving time, a period so desperate that settlers reportedly ate their horses, their shoes, and, in one horrific instance, even each other. The English were unprepared. They had brought chemical tests for gold instead of livestock, and they had built their fort in the heart of the Powhatan Empire. The 20,000-strong Powhatan nation possessed bows that could fire 9 times faster than an English musket. The colony was on the brink of extinction. Enter John Rolfe. Rolfe was a 24-year-old visionary entrepreneur who understood that if Jamestown was to survive, it needed a cash crop. At the time, England was addicted to tobacco, a trade controlled strictly by the Spanish. Selling South American tobacco seeds to foreigners was a crime punishable by death, but Rolfe managed to smuggle a supply into Virginia. The humid climate of the Chesapeake Bay proved perfect. Rolfe's first harvest was worth over $1 million in today's currency. Tobacco became the foundation of the American economy. To secure peace, Rolfe married the daughter of the Powhatan king. A woman's name became a legend, Pocahontas. Her image was used to advertise the New World across London, drawing thousands of new settlers. Within 30 years, the population of Virginia exploded to 20,000. However, this prosperity had a dark side. In 1619, the first West African slaves arrived, marking the beginning of a complex and painful chapter in the American story. The Pilgrims and the First Thanksgiving. 10 years after Rolfe's arrival, a different breed of settler landed 450 miles to the north. These were the Pilgrims, religious dissidents seeking the freedom to practice their faith. They arrived at Plymouth in the dead of winter during a mini ice age. The conditions were brutal. In the first 3 months, half of the Pilgrims died, including the wife of Edward Winslow and the husband of Susanna White. Yet the survivors persevered. They found an unlikely ally in the Pocahontas people, who were themselves reeling from a plague brought by earlier European explorers. The Pocahontas taught the Pilgrims how to survive in the sandy soil, and in return, the Pilgrims used their firearms to help the Pocahontas defeat a rival tribe. This alliance led to a period of peace celebrated by a feast we now know as Thanksgiving. Today, more than 10% of all Americans can trace their ancestry back to the 50-odd survivors of the Mayflower. A growing divide, the road to rebellion. By the mid-1700s, the 13 colonies were thriving. Americans were taller, healthier, and 20% richer than their British cousins. Yes, they paid only a quarter of the taxes. But the British Crown, seeing the wealth generated by American timber and trade, wanted a larger piece of the action. The flashpoint was Boston. In 1768, British officials seized the Liberty, a ship belonging to the wealthy merchant John Hancock, triggering riots. The king responded by sending 4,000 redcoats to occupy a city of just 16,000 people. On March 5, 1770, tensions boiled over into the Boston Massacre. A mob of angry, unemployed colonists faced off against 8 redcoats. A lone shot rang out, followed by a volley. 5 colonists were killed, including Crispus Attucks, an African American who became one of the first martyrs of the Revolution. Paul Revere, a silversmith and master of propaganda, engraved an image of the event titled The Bloody Massacre. Thanks to a new postal system designed by Benjamin Franklin, news of the massacre spread across the colonies at lightning speed. When the British later imposed a tax on tea, the colonists responded by dumping $1 million worth of tea into the harbor. The message was clear: no taxation without representation. The revolution begins, Lexington and Concord. In September 1774, leaders like George Washington and John Adams gathered at the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia. They declared that an attack on one colony was an attack on all. They were no longer just Virginians or New Yorkers, they were Americans. Across New England, Minutemen, farmers, blacksmiths, and shopkeepers began training for war. On April 19, 1775, the British marched towards Concord to seize a rebel arms cache. Paul Revere made his famous midnight ride to warn the countryside. At sunrise in Lexington, 60 militiamen stood their ground against hundreds of the world's finest soldiers. Among the rebels was Prince Estabrook, a black slave fighting for a nation that had not yet granted him his own freedom. Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if you mean to have war, let it begin here. Captain John Parker. The shot heard round the world was fired. The British crushed the resistance at Lexington, but as they marched back to Boston, they were ambushed by over 1,000 militiamen. A third of the British force was killed or wounded. The American Revolution had begun. A ragtag group of pioneers had decided to take on the greatest military superpower on the earth. They were fighting for more than land. They were fighting for the dream that a people could govern themselves.